The following programme contains views and opinions that some viewers may find upsetting. Viewers should consider whether their feelings are fragile and they are likely to be triggered by being offended. Should you feel that any of the topics covered have upset you, please comment in the section below so we can ignore you. We would also like to apologise for the lack of nudity and scenes of a sexual nature.
In the immortal words of Jeff Lynne and his band. Hello, and welcome to The World of Arkwright. In this series we'll be looking at road safety, and we'll be kicking it off with a programme called Bloody Cyclists. When I was young, we had a rite of passage before you became a teenager as a boy, where you had to do cycling proficiency. And this meant giving up a whole day of your summer holiday, which were bloody precious in them days. And you'd go down Priory, where there was a large hard standing area where we could learn how to cycle bikes on the road. This meant learning how to cycle in a straight line rather than swerving all across the bloody road with traffic. We learned how to look over shoulder. Yeah, you can do that on a bike, you know. You can see what's going on around you, see the traffic. And we learned how to indicate by using hand signals. Once again, that's possible on a bicycle. We learnt not to pull out at junctions if there were traffic coming down the road. And we learnt that when the light's red, you stop at it, rather than just going straight through and playing with traffic coming round all the way. And we learnt that pavements were for people walking, not for bloody cyclists. So, those were the basics. Then we got on to more advanced stuff, like avoid being hit by the big metal boxes on wheels, because they're quite dangerous. And if you do come into contact with one of them, you'll end up in one of these, or possibly one of these. You learnt that it was your responsibility to look after your own safety, and not relying on other people. Because when you rely on other people, what you're doing is you're making an assumption. And the assumptions are, 1, that they have the mental capacity to understand not to run you over, 2, they have the skill not to do so, and 3, they've actually bloody seen you. Because we all know what they say about assumptions.
It's the mother of all fuck-ups.
And whilst we're on the subject of being seen, riding around on a bicycle in the depths of winter when it's dark, wearing black with no reflectors and no lights on your bike, is about as sensible as entering a catch-the-javelin competition. In my day, if we were stopped for cycling in dark without lights on, it would be by the police, and it would be the local bobby, and he'd arrest you and throw you in jail. No, only joking, no. He'd give you a stern talking to, he'd tell you off, and he'd tell you to walk your bike home. And he took this seriously because he was a local bobby, and he lived locally. He knew who you were, he knew where you lived, and most importantly, he knew your dad, because he'd drink with him down local. Nowadays, your local bobby isn't local at all, he probably lives 35 miles away. He's not interested in local community. He's only interested in arresting people for misgendering somebody, or tweeting something very unpleasant, or telling a factual truth on social media that some soya latte drinking Gen Z woke-tard can't deal with. It's a bit like saying Brian, the big strapping 6'7", 22 stone second row forward from local rugby team, who now wants to be called Brianna, looks ridiculous in a dress. Well, I'm sorry, but they do. When we were kids, we were always told, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. But it turns out nowadays, getting beaten up or having your prized possessions stolen, like a £15,000 motorbike, isn't worth investigating. But the police will commit huge resources to prosecuting someone for hurting another person's feelings. Yeah, because it's the important psychological stuff that's going to really matter in the long run, not your loss of money or your hospital treatment. For instance, I told Gaffer at work that I now identify as a higher celestial being, and this meant that my pronouns were now God or O Divine One, and that when any staff talked to me, I wanted them to lay prostrate on the floor, stretching themselves out with their arms outstretched ahead of them, saying, "Oh Divine One, we crave an audience with you." That included Gaffer as well. He wasn't too impressed, and he told me to stop being such a wazzock. So I got him arrested for hurty feelings, and he's now in prison. Anyway, coming back to cyclists being dressed all in black, doesn't make them a ninja, because that would imply some form of significant training and skill on their behalf. All it makes them is a gimp. Nothing more and nothing less. Just a gimp. Any road. Gaffer will be getting out of prison in about 2035. It seems a bit harsh, the sentence. It wasn't going to be as long as that, but the judge added to it because as the sentencing was being passed, Gaffer called him a cunt.